Okay, so I'm sure you're thinking that the answer to the question in the video's title is obvious. Montreal is easy to photograph because it's old and pretty. But this video is not so simple, and I am here to present much more nuanced thoughts on the topic. What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel, where I put out new photography-related content almost every Monday. So if you like this video and you want to see more like it, you can go and check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe to get a new video almost every Monday. In today's video, I'm going to be answering the question in the title, why is Montreal so easy to photograph? This video is going to be a part of a new series that I want to do, maybe I might do it, it might be a series, for cities that I visit. And I want to talk about the unique characteristics of each city that makes them either really easy or really hard to photograph. Now, particularly I want to talk about cities that are difficult to photograph and why, but in order to do that, I figured it would be useful to contrast them with a city that is easy to photograph. So here we are laying the groundwork for that by talking about Montreal. I just returned from a trip to Montreal. I spent a week there and I spent another week there last year around the same time. And in my experience there, Montreal is one of the most photographable cities that I have visited, at least in North America. And I would posit that it has as many street photography opportunities as New York per square kilometer. It is old and pretty, yes, but it's also walkable, accessible, and affordable, and has a variety of geographical features that lend themselves to the art of making pretty pictures. So I have visited Montreal twice, and both times I stayed on the island portion of Montreal, particularly in the plateau and downtown areas. So most of the discussion in this video is going to be talking about those areas and the areas that are accessible by transit from those areas. So my first section here is called walkability. This is by far probably the most important piece for making a city easy to photograph. Most of the downtown area and plateau are built for pedestrians and not cars. Most of the roads are narrow and one-way, causing cars to move slowly and making streets easier to navigate for pedestrians, especially when you're a distracted street photographer wandering absent-mindedly towards whatever interesting thing catches your eye. Unlike many Canadian cities, Montreal does not dedicate vast swaths of real estate in its most densely populated areas to parking lots and wide roadways. Since I do all of my street photography on foot, I find that the most difficult cities to photograph are those that require you to traverse these expansive parking lots and roadways in order to reach different locations. Parking lots are rarely, if ever, worth photographing, and so the time and energy that it takes to cross them is essentially wasted. In Montreal, there are so few parking lots that I can imagine it would be difficult to find parking downtown, but that's okay because Montreal also has a robust metro system that can replace driving for commuters. More on that later. When your city is built for cars, it is full of destinations, places that you must drive to. The journey to and from these destinations is full of empty space, or things designed to catch your eye from a car window, i.e. large signs and billboards. These are not photographable. When your city is built for walkability, many businesses know and rely on foot traffic for a main source of customers. And so they develop strategies to catch the eyes of pedestrians. A charming window display, a bespoke neon sign, a custom paint job or mural, or a cart of wares placed outside. There's lots of street photography opportunities of other pedestrians interacting with these things or walking by them or what have you. A lot more so than giant billboards elevated 20 feet above anybody who would be on the street. Montreal's neighborhoods are condensed and contain a mixture of businesses, necessary services, and housing of various densities. And this is like walkability 101, right? Can somebody living in any type of home access everything they need in day-to-day life without getting into a car? At least in the parts I explored of Montreal, yes. This mixture of restaurants, cafes, boutiques, and general services clustered in easily accessible locations within dense communities creates lively public spaces and bustling streets. And this level of public engagement characterizes those spaces, causing them to become places. In human geography, there's this distinction between places and spaces in urban environments. Places are spaces that have character. They are distinct from one another. They have unique traits, and that makes them particularly photographable. Montreal is a city full of places. Monolithic box buildings, expansive roadways, and repetitive suburbs are spaces, but not places. They don't have character, and cities with many of these repetitive elements are ugly and really difficult to photograph. On the other hand, alleys full of graffiti, houses with unique architectural elements, gardens overflowing with greenery, these are places. They have been given character by the people who live there and move through them and interact with them on a daily basis. On every corner I visited in Montreal, especially in the plateau, I see evidence of the people who live there. Whether that's poles covered in posters or post boxes plastered with stickers, walls adorned with murals and well-tended gardens, houses and buildings of various ages and designs and architectural styles. Everywhere is unique and fun to look at, and of course, highly photographable. In more curated areas of the city, such as downtown, we still see an abundance of places. There are numerous public art installations and quirky architectural features, historical buildings, and interesting lighting installations, all designed with the purpose of characterizing the locations where they are present. The downtown area around St. Catharines actually has large portions of the street blocked off to cars completely, creating large roadways full of pedestrian foot traffic. These areas feature museums, galleries, plazas, shopping malls, outdoor stages, and fantastic lighting displays, as well as ample outdoor seating and restaurant options. It is actually an incredible area and completely took my breath away the first time that I saw it. There's also the Old Port area, which contains narrow walkable streets that enable tourists to stroll leisurely through decadent old buildings. This area has artists' kiosks in the plazas, small eateries covered in lights, boutique cafes, and specialty shops with uniquely painted facades. Highly photographable even at night, and once again designed with walkability in mind. I walked around for dozens of hours in Montreal and never once got close to being lost, because each corner is so distinct and full of landmarks that it's very easy to tell where I have and have not been before. There were several areas that I wanted to visit that were too far to walk to, and in some cities I would be out of luck without a car, but not in Montreal, because this city also has a robust metro system that I used extensively the last time I visited, which brings me to my next chapter: accessibility. By accessibility, I mean, are areas accessible to a wide variety of people with a range of needs, privileges, and restrictions? Montreal's metro system lacks accessibility in some sense. Many of the stations don't have elevators, which limits how they can be used by people with mobility restrictions. But the presence of the metro system itself does make the city more accessible in general. There are fewer car-exclusive places, so students, tourists, people who can't afford a car or don't drive can still access most of what the city has to offer, at least in the most densely populated areas. I bought a week-long Metro Pass on day one and used it non-stop throughout my entire stay the first time I went to Montreal. I visited famous landmarks like the Botanical Gardens and the Ecosphere, Biodome, Jean Drapeau Park, and these are all places that I wouldn't have been able to get to without public transit. And the metro stations are places themselves. They're not just soulless waypoints on a map. They are fantastic feats of architectural engineering, and each one is distinct from the last. Whether it be the color palette chosen or certain architectural features, they all have this very unique look. And at one point I looked up the prettiest metro stations in Montreal and spent a few evenings just taking the train between them and photographing just the stations, because they are so different from anything that I had ever seen before. Another element that makes Montreal so accessible is the abundance of public green spaces. I've mentioned parks and plazas, but one thing that sets public spaces apart from private is that there's no security guard leering at me from a window or waiting to ask me to put my camera away if I should stray and photograph something that is off limits. They are public spaces and you can exist in them however you choose to, as long as it is within the confines of the law. Now, I talk about these parks and plazas, but I've neglected to mention the greatest green space of all, which is this massive mountain area right in the middle of the city called Mount Royal, which I do assume is the namesake for Montreal. Now, this is a fantastic resource, and I believe that every city should have something at least comparable. Vancouver's Stanley Park pales in comparison, especially in terms of accessibility. Montreal, at any point in the city, you can just look at it and walk towards it and then find a trail and walk up it. It's got this massive, wide, flat walking trail that I can assume would be accessible to a wide variety of people with mobility restrictions, but there's also a network of hiking trails that can be wandered through and explored. It's got great discoverability. There's protected underbrush areas and interesting plants, unique rock features, stairs. There's even a really steep hiking trail for exercise enthusiasts, and the entire mountain is punctuated by these giant installations of public art or otherwise unique historical buildings. Honestly, it's fantastic, and it is so explorable. It feels like at any moment you could discover something new. In fact, the last time I went up there, we discovered this massive cemetery that I did not even know was there, and it was old, and all the graves were all decrepit and covered in moss, and the fall leaves were dripping onto them, and it was absolutely gorgeous. We wandered through that cemetery for like 2.5 hours and never even came to the end of it. The first time I went up Montreal, I came across the viewpoint, which has this massive vista of the entire city, public washrooms and facilities and everything that you would possibly need to enjoy your time on the mountain. It is a very well thought out public green space and makes Montreal extremely photographable and just enjoyable in general. Now, you may think, sure, all of this is so nice and accessible and walkable until the winter hits, and then it gets down to -20 in in Montreal and nobody wants to go outside. And while that is mostly true, there are some measures in the city to combat that. So there's actually this massive underground city, this network of interconnecting tunnels and metro stations and shopping malls that allows people to walk through the city even when it is cripplingly cold outside. Now, I didn't actually explore the underground very much when I was there. The first time I went, large swaths of it were closed off due to COVID-19, and I guess indoor air recycling was not particularly popular in 2021. And the second time I went, I totally forgot about it until the very last day. So mark my words, next time I go to Montreal, I will be photographing the underground city quite a bit. I am very, very fascinated by it and interested to explore. Now, Montreal is also a city full of hills, which you would think would make it very difficult to walk around, but each of the hills is so gradual incline. At no point are you like charging up a 45-degree angle or anything like that. And the hills themselves do lend to these really, really nice leading lines to take photographs where you see the street going all the way up or all the way down, and you can just see into the distance a lot further than you would on otherwise flat ground. I've had a lot of difficulty photographing flat cities in the past. I will talk about some of them in the future, but Montreal's beautiful geographical curvature makes it incredibly easy to photograph in that regard. Plus, having different heights for the buildings and, you know, wide shots leading up the mountain. Absolutely gorgeous. Not related to accessibility, but I wanted to throw that in there. The final piece of this accessibility section is the piece that I think ties a lot of what we've talked about so far together, and that is affordability. Montreal is a reasonably priced city. Oh my God. Can you imagine a reasonably priced city? Now, I'm coming from Vancouver, where the average rent for a studio apartment is $2,200 a month. And in Montreal, a comparable studio apartment right downtown, walking distance from everything you could possibly need, is $800 a month. Despite this difference in pricing, Quebec's minimum wage is only $1 less than BC's minimum wage, which means people are making similar incomes but spending much less of it on rent. This affordability has a huge impact for Montreal's cultural character because artists and students can still afford to live there. As a result, the streets are adorned with guerrilla-style art projects, poetry, inspirational quotes, murals, posters for live events, gardens, and the many other products of artists at rest. And rest is possible. Leisure is possible. People don't have to take 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. There's time to relax and to create art. Everybody that I know in Vancouver is completely burnt out and hustling nonstop just to pay the bills. And in Montreal, that character is very much not there, at least not in the people that I interacted with. I don't want to romanticize it too much because nowhere is affordable and food is very expensive still, and the goods and services of daily life still take a toll on people, and minimum wage is still not enough. But still, the evidence of leisure is painted throughout the city, and Montreal is all the more beautiful for it. And that's everything that I wanted to talk about, why Montreal is so easy to photograph. I think it comes down to, is a city nice to walk through and interesting to look at, and what gives it those qualities? And Montreal absolutely is nice to walk through and easy to look at, and I very much enjoyed my time there. I really hope to go back, probably in June is what I keep saying. I'd love to go and check out some other seasons in Montreal, so I'm sure you'll see some Montreal-related content from me in the future. That's everything. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you think this is an interesting idea for a series and you want to see me talk about some other cities, let me know down in the comment section and I will write some scripts. I want to talk about Winnipeg, I want to talk about Toronto and Calgary and maybe Vancouver, even though I talk about Vancouver a lot. And maybe Seattle. Those are the cities that I visited recently that I have thoughts on. So yeah, let me know if any of those sound interesting, if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like, hit the alarm button, bell icon. What is it called? The notification button, the bell, it's something. Yeah, I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, stay sharp, and don't forget to keep shooting. Bye guys.